The kind of chaos in 90s thrillers rarely makes it to screens anymore. Before algorithms dictated content and everything had to be a franchise, Hollywood made movies that trusted audiences to handle something more mature. Here are 9 thrillers from that decade that would never survive a modern greenlight meeting. Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear is a remake of the 1962 thriller starring Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum. In this version, Robert De Niro plays Max Cady, a convicted rapist who spent 14 years in prison, and blames his public defender, played by Nick Nolte, for burying evidence that could have helped his case.
Is that you? Come out, wherever you are.
Now he's out, and he's come to make the lawyer's family pay. Scorsese brought back both Peck and Mitchum for the remake in smaller roles, a passing of the torch that gave the film an eerie continuity with its source material. Scorsese didn't actually want to make Cape Fear. Steven Spielberg had developed the project and needed someone to direct it, and Scorsese read the script 3 times while making Goodfellas, and hated it each time because the family at the center was too happy. What changed his mind was a single scene where De Niro's Cady corners Nolte's teenage daughter in her high school theater and psychologically seduces her. Scorsese thought if he could pull that off, the whole movie would work. It was the first Scorsese film to gross over $100 million, proof that audiences in 1991 had an appetite for something this terrifying. Sigourney Weaver plays Dr. Helen Hudson, a criminal psychologist and expert on serial killers who becomes agoraphobic after a brutal attack by one of her former subjects, played by Harry Connick Jr. 13 months later, a new killer surfaces in San Francisco, one who's recreating the crime scenes of notorious murderers from the past. Holly Hunter plays the homicide detective who brings Hudson into the investigation, and the two of them have to work together to stop him before he completes his collection. Copycat arrived in theaters just weeks after Seven dominated the box office, and it brought something the genre rarely offered: 2 women leading a serial killer thriller. Director John Amiel made that choice deliberately after reading the original script, which had Hunter's detective written as a man with a romantic subplot involving Weaver's psychologist. Amiel scrapped the love story entirely, and the movie did solid business at the box office, earning nearly $80 million on a $27 million budget. Reframing the whole film around women confronting violence against women was a gamble that paid off. Freeway is a dark comedy crime thriller that retells Little Red Riding Hood with a switchblade. Reese Witherspoon plays Vanessa Lutz, a foul-mouthed, barely literate 16-year-old whose prostitute mother and meth-addicted stepfather get hauled off by the cops. Rather than go into foster care, she decides to hitchhike to her grandmother's house. Along the way, she accepts a ride from Bob Wolverton, a soft-spoken child psychologist played by Kiefer Sutherland. Brooke Shields plays his unsuspecting wife, and Brittany Murphy shows up in an early role not long after Clueless. Oliver Stone produced the film. The MPAA originally slapped it with an NC-17 rating until they cut 2 minutes of explicit dialogue, and even Roger Ebert called it hard to watch while giving it 3.5 stars. Witherspoon was 20 years old and playing a character who could go from vulnerable to vicious in the same sentence. The film bombed at the box office partly because of censorship issues, but it developed a cult following on home video, where audiences could discover just how far it was willing to go. David Duchovny plays Brian Kessler, a writer researching serial killers for a book who advertises for someone to share gas money on a cross-country trip to famous murder sites. His photographer girlfriend, played by Michelle Forbes, is coming along to shoot the locations. The couple who answers the ad is Early Grace and his girlfriend Adele. What Brian and Carrie don't know is that Early is a killer himself, and they're about to spend 2 hours trapped in a car with him. Brad Pitt took the role of Early specifically to shed the pretty boy image he'd built after Thelma and Louise and A River Runs Through It. He plays Early as a greasy-haired drifter with a dangerous unpredictability, and Juliette Lewis, who was dating Pitt at the time, plays Adele as someone who's been broken down into something almost childlike. The shoot was brutal. The cast stayed in desert motels with swamp coolers, and director Dominic Sena sometimes had just one day in certain locations. Producer Steve Golan said the conditions were anything but star-like, but all 4 leads never complained. The movie didn't connect with audiences on release, but it's one of the darker serial killer road movies of the decade. Alan J. Pakula has an interesting filmography. He directed All the President's Men, Clute, and Sophie's Choice. Then he made Consenting Adults, a suburban thriller about a neighbor who convinces you to swap wives for one night before framing you for murder. Kevin Kline plays the Mark. Kevin Spacey plays the psychopath next door who's been planning this con from the moment he moved in. The film had been in development for 3 years before Pakula signed on. Production began in January 1992 across Atlanta locations, including Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, and various jazz clubs. The script's central hook, that you could sleep with someone in complete darkness and not realize it wasn't your wife, struck critics as absurd. But Spacey's performance, this smiling con man who uses charm and manipulation to exploit the people who trust him, has taken on a different weight in hindsight. It's uncomfortable viewing now for reasons that have nothing to do with the screenplay. The movie belongs to an early 90s wave of domestic paranoia thrillers. The Neighbor from Hell, The Nanny from Hell, The Roommate from Hell. Studios cranked them out because they were cheap, and audiences kept showing up. A young Los Angeles couple hires a British nanny to care for their newborn son. She's beautiful, warm, well-spoken, and comes with excellent references. She's also an ancient druid who feeds babies to a supernatural tree that keeps her immortal. That's the premise of The Guardian, directed by William Friedkin, the man behind The Exorcist. Friedkin hadn't made a horror film since The Exorcist in 1973, and Universal wanted him to deliver something in that vein. The script went through so many rewrites that screenwriter Stephen Volk reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown and left the production before filming finished. Jenny Seagrove plays the nanny, and she later told the Guardian newspaper that she'd begged the studio to make it about a real kidnapper instead. 2 years later, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle did exactly that and became a hit. Friedkin eventually removed his name from the television cut, crediting it to the infamous pseudonym Alan Smithy. It's the kind of weird, wild swing that studios used to take, a respected director trying something completely unhinged with a major budget. Today, it would never get past the pitch meeting. Morgan Freeman's Alex Cross made his first screen appearance in Kiss the Girls, based on James Patterson's novel about a serial killer who collects accomplished young women and keeps them alive in an underground prison. Ashley Judd plays a doctor who escapes and teams with Freeman to find the others before it's too late. The movie leans hard into 90s thriller conventions. The shadowy figure, the newspaper clipping walls, the race against time. Freeman brings his particular gravity to the role, that quality Roger Ebert described as a specific attentiveness, where you feel him weighing every piece of information he receives. Judd took kickboxing lessons from stuntman David Lee to prepare for her escape sequences. Kiss the Girls was a success at the box office and spawned a sequel with 2001's Along Came a Spider. But it also represents the tail end of a particular type of thriller, the serial killer procedural that treated its monster's psychology as something almost clinical. Post-Seven, the genre started demanding more style and more visual invention. But films like this became artifacts. Dark Blood wasn't released until 2012, but it was shot in 1993, with River Phoenix in his final role. He died before production wrapped, and the film sat in an insurance company vault for years until director George Sluizer literally stole the footage in 1999 to prevent its destruction. Phoenix plays a young widower living in the Utah desert who believes he's part Hopi and is waiting for the apocalypse. Jonathan Pryce and Judy Davis play a Hollywood couple whose Bentley breaks down near his cabin. He holds them prisoner because of his desire for Davis's character and his ambition to create a better world with her. Production had been troubled from the start, with Judy Davis allegedly being difficult to work with and treating Phoenix with continued contempt. Phoenix had specifically asked Sluicer to delay filming the intimate scenes between his character and Davis because he wanted to get more comfortable with her first, but those scenes were never shot. In 2010, Sluicer suffered an aneurysm that left him barely able to walk. While recovering, he edited the existing footage and recorded his own narration to fill in the missing scenes. The film exists now as something between a thriller and a memorial, a tragic reminder of a career that might have been. Director Taylor Hackford doesn't hide what's coming in this movie, but watching Al Pacino play the devil as a corporate lawyer is half the fun. Keanu Reeves plays Kevin Lomax, an undefeated defense attorney from Florida who gets recruited by a powerful New York law firm run by a man named John Milton. His wife, played by Charlize Theron, starts experiencing disturbing visions as Kevin gets pulled deeper into Milton's world. If the name John Milton sounds familiar, it should. He wrote Paradise Lost. Keanu Reeves turned down $11 million to star in Speed 2 so he could make this film instead. Then he took a pay cut worth millions more so the producers could afford Al Pacino's salary. When Pacino found out, he reportedly donated the same amount to charity. Pacino himself had rejected the role 3 times before final rewrites because he thought the devil was too cliched. It's a 2.5-hour legal thriller about Satan running a Manhattan law firm, and somehow a major studio made it with an A-list cast and a $57 million budget. That kind of ambition doesn't exist anymore.